Hello guys, I am the bear and today I present to you what if Jon Snow was raised in secret to be king of the 7 kingdoms. Please like and subscribe for more videos. Enjoy. Before it starts, I want you to know that I don't own the story or Game of Thrones. If I did, maybe it would have ended with another king on the throne.
That he saw before jumping off the window, but the thought faded immediately when he tried to move his arm. The pain that he felt made him yell so loud that Arthur entered running with Dawn in his hands ready to kill someone. "Jon, are you okay? It's nice to see you awake." Arthur spoke with a fatherly smile on his face. Jon took a moment to look around. The room was empty. "Where are we?" he asked. "Lyra and Daisy convinced Lady Mormont to let us stay inside the castle. After all, you saved Harry and a fisherman." She didn't think too much her decision. Arthur chuckled slightly. Jon gave him a subtle smile, but he heard the door creak. The new visitor just made him smile like a little child. Ghost entered to the room. His red eyes met Jon's gaze. Jon knew how relieved the wolf was after seeing him awake. "This boy here warned us about the fire. With the proper help of Lyra, he dragged you to the castle before we could get to you," Arthur said. Jon noticed that he felt guilty for leaving him alone during the feast. "He has a new friend too," the knight added. "He let Lyra pet him?" Jon asked, amazed. "No, he arrived to the castle with a dragon over his back. We thought that we were still drunk when they arrived, but it was a true dragon." "And where is it?" Jon asked. He knew that the dragon wasn't an hallucination. Arthur cleared his throat and made him a subtle signal, pointing under the bed where Jon was lying. Jon's eyes widened and looked directly to Ghost. With a serious tone he said the command. "Ghost, let me see it." Ghost walked forward and started to sniff under the bed. It looked like a signal for the dragon to go out. A moment later Ghost raised with a little dragon on his back. Its scales were white as snow, but some parts of its spines and eyes were red, just like Ghost's eyes. A white dragon and a white wolf. "It's a very funny coincidence," Arthur said. "Do you have a name for him?" Jon woke up that same day, but a voice inside his head whispered to him the proper name for that dragon. Maybe he chose the name because of its red eyes, or maybe it was to honor his own true name. He wasn't sure of anything. "His name will be Caraxes, just like the dragon who killed the mighty Vhagar. His rider was Aemon Targaryen, and I plan to ride this one just like my ancestors did," Jon said, determined. Nothing was stopping him of become a Targaryen. "Caraxes," he whispered as he extended his arm trying to reach the little dragon. Caraxes looked at him and approached to caress Jon's hand with his snout. Jon felt the heat that the dragon irradiated. The feeling of Caraxes' snout made him laugh. Caraxes jumped immediately over him. Jon thought that it was a dream, but Arthur's words made him realize that it wasn't. "You have achieved something that was impossible. Not even your ancestors were capable of hatch a dragon egg." "When will we go to the mainland?" Jon asked. "As soon as you recover from those wounds. It's a long way back to Winterfell," Arthur replied. "Robb heard about your act of bravery, and he heard about the dragon too." His face changed suddenly. The rumors of a dragon in Bear Island would fly to King's Landing soon. Jon noticed that Arthur was hiding something from him. "What is tormenting you, Arthur?" Arthur took a deep breath and a long sigh before telling him. "Robert Baratheon is dead. His heir and Lord Stark have been accused of poisoning him. They both have been taken prisoners by the crown." Arthur was looking to the floor. "That's why Robb called for me. He will call the banners." Jon tried to stand up, but Arthur pushed him back into the bed. "Yes, the young Lord of Winterfell will call his bannermen. We will travel with Lady Mormont as soon as you can ride a horse, but now you need to sleep," the legendary knight told him with a fatherly tone. Jon tried to sleep after Arthur left him, but the sleep never came. Instead of that, he remained playing with Caraxes and Ghost. Both were very happy. They bonded while Jon remained unconscious. He was able to feel a rare energy flowing between him and the creatures. The magic was returning to Westeros after hundreds of years. When he finally managed to fall asleep, his dreams took him to a foreign land. He only saw sand and big cities full of people wearing collars and a few men wearing linen clothes. They looked like rich people for Jon, and finally he understood that those wearing collars were their servants. The picture made Jon's blood boil. Slavery, he thought while clenching his fist. Jorah Mormont was the closest thing to slavery that he ever saw, but it was nothing compared to this. All of his attention suddenly turned to a far screech piercing the air. It was the same screech that Caraxes gave the day his egg hatched. Jon was perplexed, looking to a far silhouette flying. Fire and blood, those were the only words that he could say before everything became darkness. A few weeks later, Jon was making circles in the air with his left arm. The Maester of Bear Island told him that it was just matter of exercise his arm and shoulder to get fully recovered. He looked like a fool riding his destrier, but those exercises were effective. Suddenly he got distracted by a sweet laugh coming from behind. It was Lyra's laugh. They were riding as scout of the caravan with Ser Arthur. The knight was reluctant to leave him alone again, but the truth was that he was never alone. Ghost was always with him, and he was big enough to carry Caraxes' cage from time to time. Look at him, the bastard, his wolf and his dragon. Lyra said mockingly. What do you want, troublemaker? Jon replied with a serious tone, or at least something he thought was a serious tone. Lyra was a little distraction for him. By that time he was always thinking about Arya and Sansa. They were in King's Landing as hostages. Robb was forced to bend the knee to King Joffrey Baratheon, the bastard king, as some people called him. Lyra took him out of his thought again. We need to talk, she said, trying to stay serious. About what? About what happened before you rescued Harry from the fire. We were drunk as hell, Lyra. None of us was thinking clearly. Besides, I'm a bastard. You're from a noble house. Everything I did was wrong. You're a bastard from House Stark who has a dire wolf and a dragon. Do you know another bastard who has achieved something like that? It's just luck, he said. She didn't know about his real identity. Neither Caraxes' presence made her question his true origins. Well, I hope that you could spare some of that luck. You walked into the fire and escaped with a few burns and a broken arm. Could you get to the point at once? Jon asked bitterly. What I'm trying to say is that we make a good couple, you know. I'm not a common lady who uses dresses and takes stitching lessons. We are young, and we are free. What can we lose? Lyra's words cracked his emotional armor. No one had ever asked him about sharing a life with him, neither he had thought about sharing his life with someone. The gods were evil with him. He was a Targaryen, and being related to a Targaryen was enough to get you beheaded. He was about to answer the question when Arthur interrupted them. Hey, lovebirds, look. He whispered, pointing towards a clear in middle of the forest where a man was standing alone surrounded by 5 raiders. The man had an Associ aspect for Jon. He wore a blue surcoat with a silver mask embroidered in the chest. There were 5 men lying dead on the ground and a banner with the same sigil standing behind the Associ man. The man raised his sword over his head with both arms, waiting for his attackers. One of the raiders charged forward, but the Associ man dodged him and cut his horse's front legs, making him fall and seconds later being crushed by his own horse. After that, 2 men charged, but got interrupted when Arthur yelled to distract them while Jon and Lyra approached their rear. The sound of steel clashing against steel was deafening at first, but something inside Jon made him feel comfortable with it. As sudden as the combat started, the first man died. Arthur beheaded him with Dawn. After disarming him, Ghost jumped and bit the throat of a horse, making it fall over its rider leg. A scream of pain pierced the air before Ghost ripped the man's throat off. Jon parried a heavy blow directed to his side before slashing through the man's chainmail. His opponent fell from his horse. The blood spurted from his mouth and wound. The image made Jon feel sick, but he looked at Lyra and saw her in the ground. Her horse lay dying next to her. The bandit charged against her only to meet face to face with her war axe. Jon looked around searching for enemy reinforcements, but the screams of the incapacitated vandal made him turn to see how the Associ man buried a knife in his face many times. It was the living image of pure anger and fury. It made Jon shiver. Arthur took the man put of his killing frenzy, pushing him to the ground. The man tried to stand up to fight with him, but Arthur was faster and put Dawn on his throat before he could make any other movement. If I take my sword away, will you remain calm? The man looked at them and nodded slowly. I can see that you're not raiders. Arthur sheathed Dawn and extended his arm to help him getting up. It's very rare to see a knight in the north, the Associ man said. What's your name and why are you here so far from Essos? Jon asked him. My name is Vagonos Valen and I'm a knight of the Leper King of Yermak. The man pointed to the banner with the silver moss on a blue field. Those are my king's colors. We came here looking for a boy who has a dragon and a wolf, at least that's what the sailors say. Jon looked at Arthur and Lyra with a knowing gaze. Why would an Essosi king want to find me, he thought, but he got interrupted by a battle cry coming from their back. They turned and saw 5 men charging against them with swords and axes. Those were the reinforcements. The sound of swords clashing started again. Jon slashed through the chest of one of the men, but the chainmail stopped his attack. The man slammed his shoulder against Jon's chest, making Jon stumble. Then the man sent a heavy blow against him, but Jon parried it and slashed through his leg. The man yelled for a moment before dying as Jon buried his sword between his neck and shoulder. Lyra had the upper hand against one of the bandits. She slashed with her axe on his side and buried it on the bandit's head. Her victory didn't last long. Suddenly the remaining bandit tackled her. The man was ready to cut her throat. Jon's blood started to boil and charged against him, kicking the man away from her. The man tried to stand only to meet Jon's fists. The picture of a man hurting Lyra made him unleash a part of him he didn't know he had. Jon lost the count of how many times he punched the man's face, but Arthur and Vagonos had to separate him from the corpse. Jon came back on himself and felt the pain in his knuckles, but the picture of what he did made him vomit over the ground. Looks like this boy is good at killing. Vagono chuckled. And it looks like I found the boy I was looking for, or should I say, the boy found me. He kneeled in front of Jon. You must not fear, I owe you my life and would gladly serve you, until we arrive at Winterfell. My master sent me to take you to Yermak, as maybe you should know by now, your family is in Essos. They are traveling with a Dothraki horde and 3 Westerosi knights. One of them talked to the king about you. Your aunt, Daenerys Targaryen, has 3 hatchlings, just like that one of yours. He said, pointing to the cage where Caraxes was staring at them. The news of his family hit him like a hammer falling on his head. He thought that they were long gone, that his only living relative was Aemon. Now he had an aunt with 3 dragons, Daenerys Targaryen, he thought. The name didn't mean nothing for him, but it woke up a childish curiosity inside his head. Do they know if I'm alive? If they do, then why didn't they come to take me with them? Many questions began to surface inside his head, but remembered that he had a duty with his mother's family too. Lord Stark protected him as much as Arthur or Ashera. Now Robb needed his help and support. If what you say is true, then I should travel with you to Essos, Jon said with a solemn tone, but first I need to help my cousin. The Lannister imprisoned my uncle, Lord Stark, and took his daughters as hostages. I have a duty with them too. You have a noble purpose, young dragon lord. I will travel with you to Winterfell. It's in my way to White Harbor. The king would be glad of knowing that you saved me from those raiders, Vagono said. He walked away to find one of the bandits' horses. Jon remained there thinking in what his next step would be. What do you want to do now? Arthur asked. Nothing, we will help Robb to rescue Lord Stark and the girls. This man knows about your true parentage, and if what he says is true, this is our chance to meet them, the chance to make your claim real. I don't need to make my claim real. I don't want a claim. I just want to help Lord Stark and Arya and Sansa. They are my family too. Where was my grandmother when you arrived at Winterfell? Where were they when Ser Gerald and Ser Oswell left us behind believing that I was dying? I grew up with the Starks. I'm a Stark too. They are closer to me than my Targaryen family. Even you are closer to me than them. He didn't suffer growing up as Brandon Stark's bastard, but it was hard for him to leave his cousin alone to meet his long-lost family across the narrow sea. You know that I'll do as you command, boy. If this is what you want, I will follow you. This is what I want, Jon replied firmly. Arthur gave him a fatherly smile. You're as stubborn as your mother, did you know that? Maybe stubbornness is what we need right now. Jon chuckled. They resumed their journey a moment later. Arthur rode side by side with Vagono. They were talking about wines and horses. Arthur was a Dornish man, so he knew very much about both topics. Jon, on the other hand, rode alongside Lyra. They were covered in dirt after the battle. Suddenly Lyra looked at him smiling. Many girls would be afraid of Jon after watching him kill a man with his own fists, but Lyra was no common girl. She was half bear if the rumors about her fatherhood were correct. Her brown hair looked dirty, but it combined with her wild beauty. I forgot to thank you, she sighed deeply, for saving me of that fucking cunt. Jon laughed after hearing her words. She used to swear when she was nervous. It's nothing. I think that you would have done the same for me. She bit her lower lip and blushed. My mother always taught us to be strong, to face our enemies with the ferocity of a bear, but when you killed that man to protect me I felt like a defenseless little girl, I felt like a damsel in distress." She leaned to the side and placed a gentle kiss on Jon's cheek. Jon felt that all the blood in his body ran directly to his face and his manhood. "Maybe I could thank you later," she said with a flirtatious tone and a mischievous look. Winterfell was very close, and they would be the first to arrive at the castle. The thought of seeing his stepmother again made him happy, but the situation that brought him back to Winterfell was a nightmare. Lord Stark's life was in risk. He entered into a viper's nest where backstabbing and scheming was a common practice. There was no honor among the people of the Red Keep, none of them helped Lord Stark or the king's true heir. "Open the gates," one of the guards ordered. They rode into the courtyard where Robb was waiting for them. Jon noticed immediately that Robb was surprised by his new companions. It was like one of those tales written in the old books, a bastard traveling with a knight, a foreign warrior, a wolf, and a dragon. Jon looked around searching for his mother. A moment later he found her. He climbed down from his horse and ran to meet her. He squeezed her between his arms like she used to when he was a little boy. Then they separated and looked at each other. Ashera noticed immediately the burned scars in between his neck and shoulder. She let a worried sigh escape from her mouth, but Jon interrupted her before she could articulate any word. "It was an accident. I saved a man and a little boy from the fire," he said proudly. Ashera wrapped her arms around him again while she laughed. "It seemed like my dumb brother taught you the best way to become a dumb knight." Jon was ready to reply when Robb cut him off with a fierce hug. Jon felt all the anguish that Robb experienced during the last weeks. "It's nice to see you back, Jon. I'm here to serve you, Lord Stark," Jon said respectfully. "I know that this isn't the best of the situations, but I will help you to save your father and the girls." "Your loyalty will be remembered, Lord Snow," Robb replied, "but I have heard about your actions back in Bear Island. I've heard about your dragon and your boldness." Jon looked down to his feet ashamed. "I did what I thought was right, Robb. The dragon was just a coincidence. I assure you that I wish no harm against our family." Jon excused himself. He thought that Carax's presence in Winterfell was a sign of revolution. It was matter of time before the spider discovered his true identity. "If you wish to punish me for my recklessness, I gladly accept my punishment." What kind of man could punish a brave squire who saved 2 persons from the fire? "Get up, Jon Snow, and come with me. We have a war to win. Tywin Lannister has attacked the Riverlands in response for the imprisonment of his younger son. We traveled with Lady Mormont's forces from Bear Island. The girl with us is her daughter, Lady Lyra Mormont," Jon replied. At the same time Lyra bowed in front of Robb. "My mother sends her regards, and House Mormont will stand by your side, as always." Robb gave them a few hours to rest from their long journey. One by one some northern lords arrived to the castle with their commanders. The great hall was being prepared to receive many people. A feast was the best way to gather all the northern lords. They were proud men, but their pride always disappeared after a few barrels of ale. The night came and the feast started. There were all kind of foods. The servants ran from one table to the other bringing more food and ale for the guests. Some of the soldiers were drunk already, singing songs and dancing. Lagono was talking with a few men about their lands. The foreign warrior always talked about Yermak and its leper king. He explained them that the mask in the banner of the city represented the mask of their king. The king used an iron mask when he rode to battle against the slavers' cities. Jon was sitting in the Lord's table besides Robb. There were many famous faces around them. He saw the great Jon Umber from the Last Hearth, Lord Rickard Karstark from Carhold, the spooky lord of the Dreadfort Roose Bolton, Lord Galvert Glover from Deepwood Motte, Lady Midge Mormont from Bear Island, and Ser Roderick Castle, the new master at arms of Winterfell. Jon didn't know those lords. Only Lady Mormont smiled at him. Arthur sat by his side. In front of them were Ashera and Lady Stark. "My lords, I think that we all know the reason of this gathering." Robb talked first. He was trying to sound older in front of them. "We're here to bring your father back to Winterfell," the great Jon said. "I say it's time to give those bloody Southerners a taste of how the Northern can fight," Lord Karstark said mockingly. "My lord, as you can notice, Lord Wyman Manderley is not with us. We should be careful and go get him first. After all, White Harbor is our only decent port," Roose Bolton said with his small and soft tone. Manderley is expecting for a husband for his granddaughter. That's the only thing that can bring that old cunt here." Great Jon chuckled. Jon laughed just like all the others around him, but then his gaze turned to look at Roose Bolton. The man was looking directly at him, sending shivers down Jon's spine. The man had pale skin and his gray eyes were examining Jon very carefully. "Excuse me, my lord, but why are we sharing our table with a bastard? Maybe I should have brought my own bastard too." Roose Bolton said bitterly. His face showed no emotions, it was like a stone. "This bastard is my cousin. He's like a brother to me. He saved a man and a child in Bear Island. I ask you to show him some respect, my lord." Robb spat back. "Oh, I see, then this is the bastard of Bear Island. They said that you came out of the fire with a dragon." The Lord of the Dreadfort was speaking directly to Jon. Jon understood that it was impossible to hide Carax's existence, but tried to avoid the question with another question. He was about to talk when Lady Mormont interrupted him. "That boy entered into a burning house and saved 2 lives. He came out with a little dragon. Maybe it was a gift from the old gods for his bravery." Lady Mormont said, "Look at that, we have wolves and a dragon on our side. Maybe we should march at once against those fuckers." "Great," Jon said. The giant lords started to laugh. Jon noticed how eager were the northern lords to fight a war. "I'll send someone to call for Lord Manderley personally. If he refuses the call again, he will pay the consequences. Be witnesses of my words, my lords," Robb said with a firm tone. After saying that, all the lords cheered him. They kept dancing and drinking many hours more. When Jon got up from his chair and walked in direction for his chambers, Robb called for him. "We need to speak in a more private place," Robb said with a serious tone. They walked to Lord Stark's dispatch. The room brought old memories to Jon's mind. He used to sneak inside with Robb to see ice, the ancestral sort of House Stark. "You'll ride to White Harbor tomorrow," Robb said. Jon remained silent for a moment, trying to understand Robb's orders. He arrived at Winterfell just a day ago, and now Robb was sending him to White Harbor. His face probably betrayed him, because Robb continued explaining his plan. "You'll make Manderley pledge his forces to our cause. If he doesn't, you will judge him as an oathbreaker and go on with his execution. I will give 50 riders. If you succeed, we will meet in Moat Cailin with the rest of our forces." Jon nodded and attempted to leave the room, but Robb stopped him again. "We need to talk about your true identity, Jon," Robb said with a worried tone. "I've already told you, I will fight for my family and you are my closest family," Jon replied. "But now you have a dragon, the word will spread about you. Dragons were gone for centuries and now you brought one back. You saw Roose Bolton, the man is no fool. I can't trust him as I trust my other bannermen." "I didn't ask for this, Robb. I only want to recuse my uncle and your sisters, and I know that if those lords know that I'm a Targaryen, they will hang me without question. I will not risk this war for recognition. Let them believe that the old gods sent me a gift for my bravery." "I know, but if one of these days you think that it's moment to reveal your true parentage, count with my support. I can't promise their support, but Winterfell would never turn its back on Lyanna Stark's son, much less the southern laws who supported your family." Jon knew that Robb was saying the truth. They always protected each other, even from their mothers. "If you don't wish to speak from anything else, I will go to my room. It's a long journey to White Harbor. I'll make the old fool recapacitate, don't worry." Robb smiled and gave him a brotherly hug. There were 2 young men gathering an army to face the Grey Lion, Lord Tywin Lannister, an experienced commander and one of the most powerful men in Westeros. The idea made Jon smile while he walked to his chambers. When he entered the room, the fireplace was lit, the logs crackled as they burned. Jon had missed the comfort that his home transmitted. He was tired after the long day he had, but when he sat on the bed, Lyra came in. She gave him the same mischievous look from earlier. She walked forward and sat next to Jon. They were speechless, both knew what was going to happen. Jon looked directly into her eyes. He got lost in those gray eyes. She made the first move, bridging the distance between both. "Are you sure that you want to do this?" Jon politely asked her, but the only answer that he got was Lyra's lips kissing his neck gently at first, but then the gentle kisses became wild bites. The small pain made him lose control. They collapsed into the bed, Lyra fighting to untie his tunic while Jon did the same with hers. Soon their bare chests met as she fell upon him for a passionate kiss. Their tongues battled, Jon's manhood stiffening when she rubbed her mound against it through their clothes. Her fingers were undoing his laces and her tongue was in his mouth, and her hand slipped inside his small clothes and brought him out. Isn't that good? She whispered as she guided him inside her. She was sopping wet down there, and no maiden, that was plain, but Jon did not care. In that moment nothing else mattered, the war, his long-lost family, Caraxes, none of it mattered, only the heat of her, two souls becoming one as they danced, pushing their limits, rubbing their bodies against each other. Isn't that sweet, she said again. Not so fast, oh, slow, yes, like that. There now, yes, sweet, sweet. I can see that inexperienced in this, but I can show you. Harder now. Yes. Jon understood then what Robin Theon told him long ago when they visited Wintertown's brothel, the feeling of a woman's tight walls constricting around his length. Don't stop, please, don't stop. She said as Jon felt that he was almost reaching his climax. Lyra let out a scream inside his mouth as they kissed. A few moments later Jon felt it happen, he reached the point of no return. Lyra. He grunted against her ear. Jon, she replied as she kept moving her hips around. Jon hoped that she could feel at least a little of the great amount of pleasure that he was feeling. It was his first time with a girl. He didn't think about the consequences of his acts at that moment. How could he? He collapsed over Lyra, but rolled off her body immediately onto his back. He was exhausted, but a feeling of happiness invaded him. He gave her a warm smile as she turned and snuggled against him, her head resting over his chest. She reached for his lips once more and gave him a soft and gentle kiss. Did you ever thought that this could happen? She asked him naively. No, never. I'm a bastard, Lyra. You're a noble lady. I never imagined that this could happen. He replied softly. It wasn't the truth, obviously, but he had a role to play. Almost everybody north of the Neck hated the Targaryen. Tomorrow we march to Moat Cailin. Do you think that this is going to end well? We will bring Lord Stark and the girls back to Winterfell soon, but I'm not riding to Moat Cailin tomorrow. He took a deep breath and continued. He noticed her gray eyes piercing his. I'll ride with 50 riders to White Harbor. I will take the forces of House Manderly to Moat Cailin if I can convince the old man. Maybe I come back married with his granddaughter. He jested. Lyra punched him right in the chest. She was strong for being a girl. If you come back married, I'll cut off your pecker and use it as a necklace. She gave him a killing gaze. Jon chuckled. You're a fool if you think that Lord Wyman Manderly would marry her granddaughter with a bastard. A bastard of House Stark who has laid with a noble lady already. Did you forget that? No need to be worried. He said. He liked Lyra. She was wild and strong, not like all those ladies that mocked at him when he was younger. He didn't know if their relationship would last, but he wanted to enjoy it as much as he could. I'll meet you as soon as I can in Moat Cailin, but I can't promise that it won't take long. Maybe I should go with you, she said, but Jon cut her off immediately. We have our orders. Your place is with your mother and sister. I'll bring more men from White Harbor. That's my duty. He said. He was training to be a knight. He needed to act like one. I hope that you can understand that. She sighed deeply. Just come back with us as soon as you can. I will, he said quietly. Jon found quietness with his new companion. But nothing lasts, he thought. He slept like a baby that night.